And we're back. Welcome to the Bandit Room. My name is Charles. Here in the studio with me, we have Caleb.
Hello.
And across the table from me, we have Mr. Matt Dosch. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Now, for our listeners, Matt Dosch, you are the COO of Comporium.
That's right.
I first met you when I believe you were working on our account when we first moved downtown. I don't think you were C-level at that point. What was your prior role at Comporium?
I spent about 20 years. I've been with Comporium for almost 30 years. So the first 20, I was doing a lot of external relations stuff. Yeah. I came from D.C., so I was doing regulatory and legislative affairs, industry affairs, that kind of stuff, going back to D.C. quite a bit.
Gotcha.
And then had an opportunity to make a hard left turn and got into operations 7 or 8 years ago.
Okay.
And so, yeah, I've been doing that ever since. And really one of the first projects I worked on as I was actually preceded my formal move, but I started working on the Gigabit project.
Yeah.
And
nice.
that really got me involved in some downtown economic development stuff and sort of led me to making the move over into operations. So
yeah, it really worked out for us because Zipstream was released maybe like a year after we moved downtown or something like that. It was like we moved in 2013. So was that?
Yeah, it was right around that time frame.
Yeah.
Right around. Yeah, and we that was a cool project. I mean, at the time, the world moves quickly.
Right.
But at the time, the only two really well-known gigabit cities were Kansas City, courtesy of Google Fiber, and Chattanooga, courtesy of the electric utility in Chattanooga. And so we got it in our heads that if we were to do the same kind of thing, it would hopefully spur some downtown economic development.
Gotcha.
And I think it has.
Yeah. Well, we've appreciated it. So Comporium, what is the phrase now? It's your friendly neighborhood tech monopoly. Is that what it is? Oh, no, tech giant. Tech giant.
Yeah. Thanks for that. Little slip of the tongue.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean we're I think it's a great company. It's a great story. It was founded by one of Rock Hill's first serial entrepreneurs. We like to say John Gary Anderson back in the day, and he typical independent telecom story. The Bell System had no interest in coming to a size of Rock Hill in the 1880s and 1890s.
Okay.
So Mr. Anderson got tired of sending runners the several blocks down White Street to check on whether his buggy parts or car parts came to the train depot.
So it's the same Anderson as the Anderson Buggy Company.
Yeah, okay. And then it became Anderson Motor Cars. And he bought 2 telephone sets, one for his desk and one for the train depot, and started calling. And then more businessmen wanted in on that action.
Wow.
And thus a telephone company was born.
He had the right idea. That's fantastic.
Yeah, I didn't know that was his venture originally, Comporium. That's cool.
Yep.
Yeah. That's fantastic.
So we've been, I hope we still bring a bit of an entrepreneurial spirit to what we do.
For sure.
Zipstream, being a recent example of that, and now we're looking at, we're in the middle of converting all of our traditional cable customers onto a streaming product.
Oh, interesting.
And not only do we feel like that's a better product for looking ahead to where video is going, now our cable system is sort of an app, if you will, nestled on Apple TV or, with Hulu and everybody else. And there's Comporium Stream TV. But the other cool thing, getting back to Zipstream, once we're through with that conversion, it will allow us to take back all of the bandwidth that was used for linear video and provide ever faster internet. So once we get through that transition at the end of this year, we'll spend the next year or so planning for 2, 5, 10 gigabit service.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah. So very soon there will be no more cable basically in the area? Is that what you're saying?
By the end of the year, there will no cable in the sense of cable boxes will be gone.
Okay.
Yes. And everyone will have a Fire Stick or an Apple TV to get to our video product.
Nice.
Okay. All right.
Very cool.
Well, how about that? Okay, well, let's back up a little bit. Now, before you got to Comporium, you said you were doing work in Washington. Where'd you go to school? What'd you study?
I went to Duke, and I was a double major. My major of passion was English. I specialized in post-romantic British literature. Thank you for asking.
Okay.
And my more practical major was public policy.
Okay.
Quick pause. Favorite author?
Favorite author? I'm a big nerd. I'm a Tolkien guy.
Okay. Perfect.
Okay.
Oh.
Just got done watching The Rings of Power.
Are you enjoying The Rings of Power?
I am. I'm on it. Yeah.
I think it's pretty good.
I think it's pretty good. Yeah.
Did you finish it?
I did.
You did?
Yeah.
I thought they did a nice job.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So you were studied your
Yes,
English passion, but also public policy.
Public policy, yes.
Okay.
So in the morning, I would write a 30-page paper on the use of commas in a particular poem.
Oh.
And in the afternoon, I would solve the Middle East peace process in 6 paragraphs. That was kind of how that worked.
Nice. Well, it's kind of worked out for you in the end, because now one of your recent big projects has been the Performing Arts Center. So,
Yes.
I mean,
Yes.
that's not a direct correlation to what'd you say, British literature? Is that what it was?
That's right.
But nonetheless, I mean, the same types
no,
of people are interested in those types of things.
I'm a huge proponent of the arts, and I think everyone. We'll talk about it in a second, but
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's a fundraising campaign coming up, and I've talked to some people. Everybody that I've talked to has some version of a struggling artist inside, whether they were they stopped in high school or stopped in college, or whether in my case they were terrible and were told to stop. But there's like a burning artist, some version of art, visual art,
funny.
or performing arts, and I'd like to do a local campaign around that.
That's cool.
Bring out the artists.
Yeah. I was a theater minor in college, business major, so focused on the important things and did the things I love as well. This guy also has created one of our murals up front.
Yeah.
He's
I did fine art minor in college, and then communications as a major. So
communications.
Yeah.
To make some money.
yeah, pretty much.
So the Performing Arts Center project has been on a low simmer for about 10 years. When it was right around 2011, 2012, when the city of Rock Hill and Comporium announced our Fountain Park partnership. And so we spent the next 5 or 6 years building that park and building Fountain Park Place next to it. But we said then, and we have maintained, that the long-term vision for that development includes a higher end, like a boutique hotel on the Main Street end of the park, and a performing arts center on the Black Street end of the park.
Nice.
It's easy to say that.
Yeah.
It makes very pretty visuals.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of work to verify the concept, do all the market studies, the market analysis on the arts side, as well as on the philanthropic side, the community's capacity to build something like that. So we've been working on that. We rolled out an arts-focused feasibility study in 2017 that proved that while, in the big picture, performing arts centers in the United States find it increasingly hard to land on a good operating model. You read every once in a while about symphonies going bankrupt or stuff like that, and sort of the old school version of Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday matinee high art is a difficult thing to talk about, being sustainable in 2022. But there's a lot of more sort of interactive, sort of art forms coming along, but the big picture was that the Charlotte market is growing so rapidly, and Rock Hill is growing so rapidly that kind of overcomes sort of some of the challenges at the top. And so it very easily proved you guys need to do a performing arts space. It's shocking that there's not one in Rock Hill.
Yeah.
And you think about like North Charleston or some of those Newberry, Florence, all have very thriving performing arts centers. So we've been again doing some behind the scenes work in the last couple of years. We just hired an executive director, Todd Leahy, in August.
Okay.
And we are in the middle of interviewing architectural firms.
Perfect.
We're very excited. We put out an RFP about a month ago and got 17 proposals, really from nationwide response. And with a project like this, the model is sort of you've got a local Charlotte architecture firm that becomes the architect of record, but they've paired up with a performing arts center design firm behind the scenes, or not behind the scenes, sort of the vision kind of firm. And so we're very excited about the opportunities we've got to partner with somebody to do something really cool.
Perfect. Yeah, Fountain Park is just a beautiful, beautiful thing that you've created there, between Fountain Park Place, the park itself. And so this is going on the Black Street side of the park? Is that the idea?
On the Black Street side of the park.
Is that right across from the main Comporium building?
It's next door to it.
Right next door
to it, yeah.
Gotcha.
Where the ice skating rink normally would be.
Gotcha.
Think about something about the size of the night theater. We're talking. It's grown a little bit in size over time, so
that's something.
Considering anything from 700 to 1,000 seats.
Okay.
Depending on how it all shakes out in the end, but it's probably a $35 million capital project.
Yeah. Wow.
That's awesome.
So somewhere between 700 to 1,000 seats. I guess the primary is just a upscale performance space. What else is being talked about being created in that?
So certainly upscale performance space. I mean, we definitely want, you spend $35 million, you want a building that's going to be quality and that's going to be a landmark for, the next 20 years, right? But we've, from the beginning, been talking to the school district, Winthrop, Clinton, York Tech. There's going to be a strong educational component to it. And in recent years, we've broadened our discussions to include Chester County schools, Lancaster County schools. And they're all very interested in making sure that what we do has facilities for sort of artists in residence programs, sort of honors arts programs, as well as the ability, of course, when we're bringing in touring shows to have every eighth grader come to Rock Hill to see whatever is playing or whatever, and sort of an arts immersion kind of component to it.
Awesome.
So strong educational component. And we really do want, while we want it to be really nice, going back to the business model, and Carnegie Hall is not quite what we're after. We want something that's going to be used, Monday through Friday, all day for various things, that it's really sort of like the community rec room,
Okay. Yeah. So figuring out ways to keep that thing busy throughout the year, throughout the week, really, because I guess your Friday, Saturday, Sunday peak performance days, but what are you going to do with it, Monday through Thursday and so forth.
Right.
So,
all
right. Yeah. Now, did I see there was going to be I don't know how firm plans are, but a black box component to it?
That's certainly on the drawing board. Yeah. And it kind of changes over time, whether it's a traditional black box theater or, there may be a use for actually sort of a digital arts support space, audio and video with, professional gear. Again, think about Winthrop, York Tech, Clinton, not having to invest in that kind of facility individually, but being able to share the investment and sort of come together for it. So black box, digital technology, and something like that.
Are you thinking of a recording space? Is that what you're saying? Like
exactly.
It could be used like
that.
Okay, gotcha. Yes. I like the black box idea because certain performances perfect for 1,000-seat arena, but other types, I think people would still be clamoring for the types of shows that might not fill 1,000-seat arena. So if you've got a performance that's notable and interesting, but you're not, you don't want to subject them to the not being able to fill the seats,
right?
Then the black box would be a nice little alternative for that.
I agree.
And also
100%.
Different types of shows, because not everything needs the upscale production. Certain stripped down shows can both be very engaging, very exciting, but the black box element gives it a whole different feel. Than your traditional.
Building on that idea too, the idea of how do we use the outdoor space. We've got enough room, and we did a space study. Believe it or not, you could drop the Peace Center into the middle of that block, and it would fit. And
really,
the Peace Center is
the
huge.
entire Peace Center, and meaning in the Fountain Park,
in the block between that we're talking about,
the block that we're talking about for the
Street.
performance space.
Just the Greenfield Peace Center.
Okay,
cool.
So my point there is that we've got a lot. We're not really landlocked. So we've got a lot of opportunity to design the entire campus, and so hopefully build in, either in conjunction with a park or some sort of outdoor performance space too, that sort of makes sense. Again, for smaller performances.
Right.
Yeah, because the Peace Center does have that kind of back half.
They've got a little amphitheater outside in the back. Sort of a scaled amphitheater. What about with the visual arts? Any connection to the visual arts with this space?
I'm sure we've talked about some.
Obviously, in the design elements of it. I mean, I'm sure that's
sort of exhibit space.
Exhibits.
Grappling with there. We've got Laurie Robichaud, who's the new Arts Council executive director, who just came to town within the last year. She's on our board.
Great.
To look for that kind of coordination. Right. I think the Arts Council. I think she would say their sweet spot is visual arts. And certainly with Winthrop nearby, I mean, with a strong arts component all the way around, certainly visual arts as well. We'd like to do something, but without not stomping on anybody else.
Right.
Not having to compete with.
Right. Yeah. And are you envisioning, I'm guessing, all the arts, as far as, it could be symphonies, could be traveling theatrical productions, could be comedy, music, choir, also all the types coming through. do you foresee this being something that a school or somebody who maybe doesn't have a top quality performing space could be utilizing for certain types of?
Absolutely. In part of the 10 years of preparatory work that we've done, the board has traveled to a lot of other spaces around the Carolinas. And one thing that we've seen over and over again is, and let's say in the case of Rock Hill's got, I don't know, at any one time, 5 or 6 community theater groups. There's definitely more than 4 at any one time. And so what we certainly want to do is make the space available to community groups, right? The York County Ballet, the Rock Hill Symphony, obviously, but these community groups too. And we've seen in other cities where maybe not all of them, but at least one group, the access to that kind of professional facility really suddenly is the linchpin that really elevates the quality of that group's work, right? I know in Spartanburg in particular, when the Chapman Center opened, the local Spartanburg Community Theater, they became the resident tenant in the Chapman Center, and they just everything, the quality of everything went up exponentially, and that'd be really cool to see. If we could be that kind of spark for one or more groups in Rock Hill, that's what we want.
There's definitely the opportunity there. I've done some shows with the Rock Hill Community Theater and served on the board there, and that's just been their story for the last 10 years is they haven't had a home. They bounce around from place to place, and they make it work. But certainly would be appreciated to have top quality kind of space to really just kind of bring some center to the group too, because I grew up doing community theater in a old theater, and at least we had the space. We had the space. It didn't have all the bells and whistles, but it was able to kind of be that space to put things together.
So when we one of the first things we're going to do by the end of the year, we'll have an architectural partner, and then the charrettes begin, and we'll come. We'll get that firm in town, and start meeting with the symphony, meeting with all the community theater groups, meeting with the ballet, and start compiling a wish list of we like this, we don't want this, and we can't be the perfect answer to everybody, but the more needs that we can meet for the more groups, the better it'll be. So that'll become an interesting part of the process because we've got the opportunity to design a building with everybody's needs and wants in mind, which is kind of cool.
So do you foresee, with Charlotte and the Blumenthal Performing Arts Center up there, they've got what they call the Broadway Lights series, where it's like season tickets you can get for the traveling Broadway shows that come traveling around. We have some season tickets for the company, and we let the employees use them and things like that. Do you foresee having a sort of a system like that eventually, where it's sort of a season ticket kind of situation where you can see whatever's coming through, or select shows or whatever, something like that?
Yeah, definitely. I think we'll, if all goes according to plan, a facility like this will provide the ticketing platform for Rock Hill Community Theater, for the ballet or whatever. So some amount of common marketing, and then access to the ticketing platform. And so each one of those groups can sort of program their own seasons and create their own season ticket packages.
Okay, gotcha.
But we will also, I'm sure that the group itself, just like Blumenthal, will look for touring shows and put packages together as well there too.
Do you foresee trying to get some of the same things that are coming to Charlotte to also come to Rock Hill, or are you looking to have a unique array of experiences that aren't coming to Charlotte that we're providing here in Rock Hill?
Yeah, I don't think we could. I don't think people would be interested at that level. Of
almost too close to be having the same.
That's right. And then
tours.
Driving 20 minutes and doing it again.
Gotcha.
So I think the key will be more coordination, and sort of friendly co-opetition, or some sort of ongoing dialogue with some of the other facilities in Charlotte, so that we're providing something unique. Hopefully, in that way, hopefully we can draw from South Charlotte. Or draw from the Charlotte metro region, because we're providing that unique product. At the same time, not directly competing, but adding to the options in the greater Charlotte area, with the idea of, specifically, of course, what's going to work here in Rock Hill.
Right. Because fantastic productions that happen up there, but it is kind of a, it's an arm and a leg to get there and to
Park.
the whole thing. Parking in Charlotte is crazy.
Well, that's a very real input into our plan, right?
Right.
The bigger the metro area gets,
Right.
and the less convenient it gets just to hop in the car and quickly on a Friday after work get uptown.
Right.
Do you still have time to eat dinner, or are you
Right.
skipping dinner and going straight to the show? That actually becomes a very real input into
Right.
our business model
Yeah.
around, okay, well, if we do it here,
Yeah.
how many people could we
Right.
draw?
Right.
And if you think about not just Rock Hill and Fort Mill, but all the people south of Rock Hill, right?
Yeah.
That's why
true.
we started
Yeah,
talking
yeah,
to
yeah.
Chester.
For
The fact is that the restaurants and retail in York County
Right.
draw from Chester. They draw from Lancaster County. Let's acknowledge that on the front end and say, as much of a hassle it is for us to get to Uptown Charlotte, we'll double
Yeah.
that for
Yeah.
people in Chester or
Right.
Lancaster, right?
Right.
So that really broadens the scope of the potential audiences for us.
For sure.
Absolutely.
And particularly the types of audiences that would go to something like this, not to generalize, of course, but the crowd sometimes can skew older for something like that. And, that would be a particular group that would definitely benefit from an easier commute to the arts center,
Yeah.
So if somebody's living in Rock Hill, but they don't like driving to Charlotte anymore, and you don't have to be old to not like driving to Charlotte anymore. I don't like doing it myself. So yeah, I mean, it just seems like a particular thing that particular demographic would really care about. So who is behind the whole Performing Arts Center? I mean, Comporium's obviously like a major force behind it. How does that work for somebody like Comporium to get into that, where you're done with Fountain Park? Explain how that works for Comporium. I mean, obviously you're doing this for the community, but it's also got to make sense for the business to do it as well, right? I mean, you're ultimately it's a business that you're starting, even if it may be a
Indirectly. So
Okay.
and actually the Performing Arts Center was a subset of the Fountain Park discussions early
Gotcha.
on. So what's in it for Comporium from a Fountain Park development standpoint? If you think back to 2010, 2011, the growth we've seen in downtown Rock Hill was not happening yet.
Yeah.
And so, we were getting together with the city of Rock Hill to try to jumpstart some downtown urban renewal stuff.
Yeah.
Knowledge Park, 2010, I don't have the timeline exactly in my head, but I'm not sure. The bleachery may not have caught on fire for the last time yet at that point.
Right.
So there was a lot of stuff that was still to come.
Yeah.
So really for us, it was spurring economic development. And then somewhat naively, I think we drew a map and said, hey, we don't have a Performing Arts Center. Let's put that there. And then learned all about the economics
How it could work.
the arts. We learned about that after the fact.
Gotcha.
So it's really more a secondary indirect benefit to Comporium because we prosper as the communities we serve prosper. And so that's really the angle there.
Gotcha. Now, there's other examples of cities where you say the city has grown based on the kind of arts activity that's happening in the city. I think I'd heard the Greenville really started to thrive after the Peace Center was brought there, or at least positioned there. You see that kind of opportunity happening for a city like Rock Hill, we've talked about it before with other folks that it's almost shocking that we've got to be as big as we are without having any sort of space like this.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah. And if you talk to the folks in Greenville who were around back in the day, it didn't just happen.
Right.
And so decisions like, let's put the Performing Arts Center at the other end of town from the one successful downtown hotel at the time. That was a conscious decision. Let's not put it next to that hotel. Let's put it at the other end of town. Let's not do a giant dedicated parking deck on Main Street for the Performing Arts Center. Let's rely on disparate parking all around town for two reasons. One, you don't gobble up real estate for future development.
Right.
Two, you've got all that foot traffic of people walking past what would become all those restaurants to get to the Peace Center.
Necessitates you to go check out the city.
Yeah. Okay. So, some very clever people very early on made conscious decisions. And I think anyone involved in that, and we've talked to a lot of them, would say the Peace Center was one of the two first links for the hotel. I forget what brand it is, but that hotel and the Peace Center absolutely sort of spurred everything else.
Nice.
And then all the way to the other end of the spectrum, the Opera House in not Abbeville. Where is it?
There is an opera house in Abbeville, but you're thinking of Newberry.
Newberry,
think, right?
yeah, the Newberry Opera House. Yeah. Similar kind of thing, right? I mean, just a little economic engine of its own right there.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, you mentioned Abbeville, I think but they do have a fantastic opera house there. It's been around forever, but it does like bring life to that little square on a weekend, that people come from all around to see the shows that are going there because they've just got a thriving theatrical scene in a small town in South Carolina. So I think we can definitely rival that with the kind of background that we have here in Rock Hill.
Just to add on to what you're saying, I think we're getting to the point in Rock Hill. If we have this up at the top end, there's even some stuff coming in south of the railroad tracks on the other side. That's starting to become like you could walk that whole section, and that whole thing could become. That's pretty cool.
And we've been talking. I mean, the Fountain Park plan has been on the table for quite a while now, and we do feel, to your point, some responsibility, and it's a good place to be in. The folks with University Center have been so successful, and that's so good. But we would hate for the locus of activity downtown to move 100% over there and to sort of starve our historic Main Street, right? So the way to keep the people on Main Street thriving is to do something on our end so that it's sort of like barbells.
Yeah, that's true.
That's awesome.
So otherwise you just move traffic somewhere else and forget about what was there before. That makes sense. Well, another topic that we've asked most of our guests about was revolving this picture here on our wall. It's a photo of the would-be training facility that hasn't happened and doesn't look like it will happen. Now, I don't suppose you have any inside information there, but you have any thoughts on what's been going on with that whole Panthers deal?
Yeah, I think, I don't know. Obviously, it's disappointing, but I think the longer that time goes on, I feel like history will be kind in assessing the city's position in the matter, and I think we'll be just fine. Earlier in the year, when it first went down, a lot of people, colleagues, business contacts I had from outside of the area were like, wow, are you guys just reeling? I mean, is everybody okay down there? It's, is Comporium still in business? And it's like, luckily, we're not a one-trick pony, and there's so much going on in the area. It's true.
Would have been nice, but
yeah, truly. I think a lot of people are like, well, I think when passions were still a little bit higher, it was like, well, we'll show him. We're gonna do this other stuff anyway. And now I just think it's like, we don't even give it that much credit, and just we'll roll with it. It will be interesting to see if the ultimate buyer of the land keeps that building for some shocking use. That's what I'm really curious about.
Because you got the framework of it sitting there, but
indoor downhill skiing complex or something.
Because I haven't actually been there, and I've only seen the renderings. How big of a space is it?
It's a huge building. It looks big when you look through the trees from the interstate. If you're on Mount Gallant looking over at it, it just looms. It's a big space.
Interesting.
You're not thinking about that for the performance space, huh?
Yeah, we're thinking something a little more organic to the area.
Did you know that the IRS now requires all tax-exempt organizations to e-file their 990 tax forms? If you need to file a 990, check out expresstaxexempt.com, the quickest and easiest way to e-file your organization's 990 forms. Express Tax Exempt offers interview-style and form-based processes to accommodate 990 experts and newcomers alike. Plus, they make it easy to attach any required schedules, share the return with others in your organization for review, and they even offer live customer support. So go to expresstaxexempt.com now for the easiest 990 e-filing option.
Shifting to a topic in the news right now, since you are one of the senior members of our local tech giant. Have you been following the saga with what's been going on at Twitter recently?
No. I mean, I personally am not a Twitter guy. I've got a minimal amount of social media bandwidth, and I just chose a long time ago that Twitter was not going to be part of my bag. But I don't know. It's interesting. I feel like as a broadband service provider, we've been whipsawed a little bit over the years with, net neutrality, right? And suddenly net neutrality where, we're doing terrible things and we need to be heavily regulated. And then we are heavily regulated. And that really didn't change the thing that we were doing. I mean, we like to think we're doing things the right way, so we just keep on doing them. And there's a lot of chatter, and actual regulations swing wildly from one way to the other. And it really doesn't impact the way we do business at all. I feel like the content companies, the edge content providers, the Facebooks, Apples, all those guys, they're going to bring the same kind of thing down around them. And I feel like at some point, this idea of content moderation is going to eventually, Congress is going to do something. It's taking Congress a long time to wrap their brain around what's going on quite yet. But someday they're going to say, okay, we've learned enough and this is just what we're going to do. And that'll probably be overreach. And then the pendulum will swing the other way. I'm just kind of projecting our experience with net neutrality into that space. And I see a lot of regulatory and deregulatory discussions in the future about content moderation things.
You think they could get themselves into a mess by creating too much of a splash over the idea of free content or non-filtered content or something like that, and the over exuberance of that will lead to Congress to create some kind of law to limit that or force these kind of big social companies to overinvest heavily in the sort of moderation.
Right. If there's a perception that self-policing isn't working and that perception could come up from any direction, then that always leads to regulatory interest, right?
Gotcha.
And so it's Mr. Musk doesn't exactly ooze self-policing responsibility. So
He doesn't. Doesn't have much of a filter on that guy. I don't know. Originally I was kind of like, well, I mean, he's gonna own the company. I don't really care who owns the company, but ever since he's been in there, I've just been a little kind of like, oh my gosh, are you really gonna be that kind of shallow and basic and childish about every little thing that you're doing so far? But anyway, we'll see how that goes. I don't know. Maybe it'll be the #1 social site in 10 years. Who knows? So what are some other projects that you're involved in? You're on the Winthrop University Foundation?
No, that's correct. Yeah, I'm on the foundation board. We're excited about President Cerna being in town. I think that's going to be great for the school. I think the school's he's the right guy and he's already deep into a really good, rigorous assessment of Winthrop's strengths and weaknesses and what they need to do to move forward. So that's pretty exciting. The other thing just in general, I'm involved in Rock Hill Economic Development and just in general, we're talking a little bit about the Panthers, not really making an impact one way or the other, but there's just so much going on in the area, in York County, in Lancaster, in the Lancaster Panhandle. But one thing that is not to be overlooked is Gallo. And with Gallo's facility opening in Fort Lawn, I would not be surprised if 10 years from now, Gallo doesn't have the impact. And this sounds maybe like overstating things, but Gallo could very well have the impact on this area that BMW has on the upstate from a jobs and investment and capital investment standpoint.
Gotcha. And for those not familiar with Gallo, you want to provide a little background as to...
Yeah, so the wine company, E&J Gallo, it's actually, and I did not know this, but they've got dozens of brands. They're actually like Diego and some of those large international conglomerates that just have tons and tons of alcohol brands that you wouldn't necessarily associate with each other.
Right.
Gallo is one of those companies with dozens of brands in their portfolio. And so they have become landlocked where they are in California, just from a corporate space standpoint. So they opened, they bought a lot of land in Fort Lawn based on access to the Port of Charleston and the interstates and so on. And so it's currently a sort of a back office warehousing facility, but it's going to become a canning facility, and it's really their East Coast distribution operations.
Nice.
And if you think about canning and distribution, I've heard somebody say that when they're up and running just with their existing plans, they're going to positively impact the Port of Charleston's business by 2%, just Gallo.
Whoa.
Just that one company.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, I mean, I think that's kind of a sleeper issue, but they're opening. The warehouse is open. There'll be canning. There'll be canning in a couple of years, and I think that they'll be, that brings suppliers and parts of their supply chain into the area. That's going to be huge for the area.
And like the Port of Charleston is a big port, if I'm not, right? So like 2% of that is
it's
big.
Huge. Yeah, it's huge. It's huge. Gallo alone is spurring some conversations about another inland port in this area.
Interesting.
There is an inland port in the upstate, primarily driven by BMW, right? So an inland port being getting all those tractor trailers off of 26 and getting rail service between someplace inland and with a direct line down to the Port of Charleston. And they're talking about a similar kind of thing in this area for Gallo, so that you don't just have a line of tractor trailers with Gallo products on them going back and forth up and down 26.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if it's of interest, but the RGDC is wrapping up a strategic planning process. So we're kind of getting organized and looking at what's the historic growth in the area. And, sort of COVID. Coming out of COVID was a good time. It was sort of some boom times around here going into COVID. COVID put the pause on a couple of projects, on a lot of stuff. Now things are heating back up again, although with different economic, parameters. So it was like a really good time just to reassess what RHEDC should be doing in support of, good paying jobs in the area, what the private sector can be doing in partnership with the city and the county in support of attracting more jobs to the area in the future. And so we're coming out of that process. And I think we'll be a little more sharply focused, and we've got some great opportunity. Again, I think the future is bright in York County and in Rock Hill, that's for sure. So we've got entrepreneurism projects, or sort of a scope of work in support of small business and entrepreneurial efforts. We've got a healthy, robust workforce development effort, and the thing that RHEDC has always done is partnered with the city or with developers to do business parks, and the city just annexed a ton of property in going south on South 77. And so, we're looking at, what can we do there? Is that an opportunity to buy some land, to do some business parks and market them to manufacturers who are going to bring in high-paying manufacturing jobs to the area?
That's cool.
Yeah, and Mayor Geddes was talking about that when he was with us a few weeks ago, about the annexing of property down south on 77, right?
Well, and something you mentioned there, that the fact that COVID probably had a big impact on a lot of things happening around here. Do you feel like we're back to where we were, or
from a COVID standpoint, we're back to where we were. Now, now the conversation has to do with economic issues, right? And inflation and supply chain issues.
Well, certainly, yeah.
So I mean, I guess you could pin continuing supply chain issues on still the COVID hangover. But looking at my business and in our business, COVID is kind of behind us now. It's just a matter of dealing with inflation and being able to get modems on time and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But and we hear, I mean, certainly from an economic development standpoint, companies are looking. There's still a lot of expansion going on, and so the future is bright from that standpoint.
Rings of Power. I was going to bring it back to Rings of Power. So, of course, you're in the cable business, so I suppose you watch everything, right? I mean, you watch Rings of Power.
We'll say that. Yes.
You also watch. Did you watch House of the Dragon at the same time?
I did not. I did not
watch that one. Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
I was trying to watch
my
both. I was
the
excited.
rest of my family has put the kibosh on Game of Thrones related viewing for that.
That's fair.
I was excited about both, and I was watching both, but Rings of Power, it was looking a lot better.
Yeah.
It was the more I watched it, the more I was like, this, it's just House of the Dragon is just so shallow. Not enough story, not enough heart to it.
Yeah,
you can just tell the world that was created by Tolkien versus the world created by George R.R. Martin. One is just so full of hope and excitement, and the other just feels like such a pessimistic, dim view of humanity. I mean, it's like it's such a downer compared to the other one. So,
well, and at one point you would have said that the one was sort of old school, right? Or maybe
for sure.
a little old fashioned.
Yeah. Well,
but now old-fashioned, old school kind of feels good. Like,
Yeah.
maybe we need a little more old school, old-fashioned. in our lives,
I get enough pessimism during the day, and just watching the news. Then, did you predict any of the character reveals? Did you predict Sauron?
I haven't finished. I haven't finished.
Spoiler
I'm
alert!
3 episodes
Spoiler
left,
alert!
so don't drop anything too big.
Well, let me just say yes. Yes.
Did you know who Sauron was going?
I mean,
Did you predict Sauron's character?
Yeah, I was happier with my other prediction.
Oh, okay. With the stranger.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you?
Interesting.
Wow, we can't talk about it with you.
I know. I'm sorry. I blame this on my roommate, who was very slow at watching things. Like, I would have been done like a long time ago.
Are you in the camp that you think the stranger is the wizard from the Peter Jackson movies?
I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
But it seems like
yes.
it could be.
Yes.
Seems like
Yes.
Forget it. I'm sorry. I'm gonna ruin this whole thing for Caleb.
Do they reveal who he is?
No,
Okay,
they don't.
okay.
Not
They don't.
definitively.
Then
Not definitively.
That's fine because
I guess you know who he's not.
I mean, I was already guessing that
Yeah.
from like the moment he showed up.
Yeah.
How do you feel, pure Tolkien guy? Have you read like the Silmarillion and all the other things too?
Mm-hmm.
How does it line up with the show? Line up with some of the lore?
I mean, based on my memory, and I think they're doing a good job. I mean, obviously, it's hard to take something that was intended to be written in as a sort of pseudo biblical, a fake history within a fake world kind of thing.
Yeah.
Covering thousands and thousands of years, and how do you sort of take that timeline and condense it into something that makes sense to watch?
Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think if the one thing that they could run afoul of is people saying, "Oh, well, you're pulling this from this and this from that, and this didn't happen." Well,
right.
It would be really weird television to say cut for 1,000 years later. It's kind of weird. So,
Yeah,
that would be odd.
That's true. Yeah, I thought they did a good job with it. I know it's getting a lot of people are either completely hot or cold about it. They either protested it and didn't think it fit into the Tolkien world, or they just loved it. And I really thought they did a great job.
I think, and on that point, I do. I've kind of read about that stuff and the injection of sort of representation and multiculturalism.
Yeah,
it's crazy how after 5 minutes,
right?
If the writing is good and the story is compelling, after 5 minutes you can't imagine that character looking any other way or being any other way, right? And then it becomes, at least to me, in retrospect, what was all the fuss about? Because this is exactly the way it should be. So I do think it's actually richer for that.
I mean, like you said, it's as long as the story's right and the writing's good, and I think and the acting is good as well. I mean, I think they got all of that with this show. I like that they included the Harfoots, even though it's sort of I don't think there's not any real justification for it. I guess it's more of just being creative with the world. Yeah. But yeah, there's certain elements that I think are true to the Peter Jackson stories and all that sort of thing that you see within there that you didn't see with Peter Jackson. Like, one common thing was in The Hobbit, Gandalf always talks about how the hobbits can avoid being seen by most if they choose. And you don't really see that in the Peter Jackson movies. They seem pretty obvious that they're people. They have their own little community and stuff like that. But these people are like little migrants that, they're just traveling place to place. And even in the first scene, they're sort of hiding themselves from these people passing through. And so I kind of like that, that's a part that was probably even truer to Tolkien than the Peter Jackson stuff was by those standards. So I thought that was very interesting. And
also, I've appreciated all of the design feels very much a piece of the Peter Jackson. All the characters sort of look like they fit. They didn't, like the orcs and stuff aren't CGI. They look like people in makeup.
Practical effects.
I appreciated it. It's one of my biggest problems with the Hobbit movies that came out was aside from stretching it way too far, it was
overdoing it.
Overdoing the CGI. Like, everything was CGI.
Yeah.
And, even down to, in this, I'm sure that they're not actually using miniatures for the wide shots for a lot of this stuff. But they make the CGI shots look like they're miniatures, and so it's like the whole aesthetic of the thing just feels right.
I think I did see where they have used a lot of forced perspective.
Did they?
It really is just tricks in the camera, not CGI. Where somebody is way farther away on set.
Yeah, that's how they did a lot of those with
the original.
The originals. Any final thoughts? Anything else that you'd like to talk about, promote? Anything coming up?
Yeah, I think we covered it all.
Okay. Sounds good. Well, we appreciate you stopping by, Matt. It's been a pleasure to talk to you. Yeah, come by again. We'd love to have you.
Enjoyed it.
Thank you very
Come
much.
back anytime.
Thanks. Well, thank you for joining us. Stick around next week and see what we talk about on the Bandit Room. Be sure to like, follow, comment, and subscribe.
The Bandit Room is a production of Span Enterprises, located in sunny Rock Hill, South Carolina. We've been developing, supporting, and growing successful IRS e-filing and business management solutions since 2010. Go to spanenterprises.com now to learn more. The views and opinions expressed in the Bandit Room are those of the guests and do not necessarily reflect or state the opinions of Span Enterprises. No information should be considered as tax, legal, or other professional advice.